Fazal Mahmood was a vibe. I mean, look at him. Does it even matter he was one of the best quicks of his era? He's just a cool looking dude, holding a cigarette here like he's posing for a photo shoot. And while this was probably natural, he was also an actual model for Brill cream. This was a man who knew how to look good and how to bowl great. In 1952, Pakistan won their first test. Fazal took 12 Indian wickets. This may have been their maiden win, but it was only their second match. So if there is anything we know about Pakistan, it is that they came out of the womb in test cricket with a cool as hell legendary quick. Fazal was patient zero of Pakistan fast bowlers. But of course, it's not just about the quicks. They then added magical spinners. Abdul Qadir danced into the wicket, one lick of the fingers at a time. Saqlain Mushtaq invented a whole new ball to finally make off-spin cool, and Syed Admal tried as hard as anyone to disprove science during his career. Pakistan cricket has had two pretty strong constants throughout the history of their cricket: wickets and sexiness. And right now, they're about as erotic as uncooked broccoli, and about as likely to take a wicket. Something is seriously wrong with Pakistan's test bowling. I mean, will Pakistan ever get their sexy back? If you love cricket on a deep spiritual level and want to be involved when no matches are being played, we have the game for you. Hit Wicket is so good that Harsha Bogle and me have backed it. And that's a lot of nerd energy behind one game. This is a strategic game of cricket, and it's not just about whacking your screen really hard with your finger. This isn't a game where you swipe all around to try and hit the ball. You work out what works best based on real-life cricket situations. For instance, dot balls bring pressure, ones and twos lead to fours. There is no way you can just hit a six every ball or take wickets all the time. This is proper cricket, yet it still has some special gaming powers in there as well. And so this game is about playing, but also building and managing your team. You are the batter, bowler, owner, coach, captain. It's your dream, right? And there are no ads, it's just cricket. Download Hit Wicket now and bring out the cricket legend in you, because Hit Wicket is a cricket game made for you and supported by other cricket nerds. Stick it in your pocket today. This was made using MV Play's Insights. The same technology that supports the England and New Zealand test players is available to club cricketers as well. Back to the Brill cream model for a moment. Fazal's fast right arm featured in 34 tests for Pakistan from 1952 till 62. He took 139 wickets in 53 innings at less than 25 apiece. He took 65 of those wickets in 7 wins at an otherworldly average of 10.69. He also had 2.62 wickets per innings, and only 7 quicks have ever done more than that. The man was legit. He took wickets in big bags, and when he did, Pakistan won games. However, Pakistan also had the third worst bowling average amongst test teams during his period. Despite what he did, only India and New Zealand had worse seam bowling at that point. And the Kiwis were the only teams whose spinners averaged more than Pakistan's, which is never good company to be in. And averaging over 40 per wicket is pretty bad. And as far as strike rates were concerned, Pakistan were also a middling team. So what all this tells us is that even though the young nation had unearthed an absolute superstar, he was pretty much on his own. It was Fazal or bust, and it was quite often bust. And the thing is that doesn't get fixed in the next generation afterwards. In the 14 years after he retired, the fast bowling average went up to 33 plus, nearly 4 runs more than it had been before. But at this point, Pakistan finally gets some spin bowling with the second best average in this phase. But their overall bowling mark is still only better than India and New Zealand. Their strike rate also remained mid-tier, as Pakistan managed to win 3 tests out of 34. And all of those came against New Zealand, who were the only team with a worse win-loss ratio than Pakistan. This all starts to change a little bit with Sarfraz Nawaz, who with his burly mustache and his luscious locks looks a little bit like a stylish criminal in a bad 1970s action film. But he was also the first person to perfect reverse swing in test matches. Though later he claimed his 7-for-1 spell wasn't reverse swing. I mean, it definitely was. More importantly though, he taught this to a young Imran Khan, who lacked a mustache but had incredible hair through this period. And from that moment, Pakistan's fast bowls were basically an Old Spice ad campaign on wheels with jet engines. Sarfraz became a cult hero in Australia after the 9 wickets at the MCG. You can't compare that to Imran Khan though. It was completely different. For 2.5 decades, he broke stumps on the field, hearts off it, and was Pakistan cricket. And then, in Imran's mold, 2 of Pakistan's most prolific wicket takers in history came through. While the West Indies were aiming at everyone's throats, Wasim and Waqar went for their toes with incredible reverse swinging Yorkers. From October 1976 till the start of the new millennium, Pakistan had the third best bowling average with their seamers only behind the West Indies, which is pretty good, and South Africa, who didn't have to play all that time. And of course, they had much less friendly wickets at home than both of those sides. And when they did need spin, Abdul Qadir was the best of his generation. Now, it was a really bad generation, but he was also joined by Iqbal Kazim, and later there was another partnership when Mushtaqs, Saqlain, and Ahmed got together. That meant that they had a combined spin bowling average of 32 runs per wicket, the best in the world for that time. Pakistan's wicket-taking process actually slowed down a little bit in the 2000s. Wasim and Waqar retired soon after that period, and Saqlain disappeared into his own Dusra vortex. Of course, the likes of Shoaib Akhtar and Muhammad Asif managed to keep the spice alive. But in between their injuries, bans, and like all the other stuff that they got involved with, there were huge chunks of just mediocrity. Then came the terror attack on the Sri Lankan team in 2009. In this pre-exile 2000s era, Pakistan's bowling average was only better than the West Indies, Zimbabwe, and Bangladesh. The averages and strike rates for both quicks and tweakers were really poor. And one major reason is that Pakistan was putting out some of the deadest wickets in the world. And it's worth remembering, it's not that previous generations of Pakistan bowlers had fun wickets, but these were even duller pitches. However, after the attack and during their home cricket exile, they were mostly in the UAE, without Amir and Asif, who were busy making number plates. This team was dragged together by Misbah al-Haq and went to #1 in the world. And sure, it was only a brief, fleeting moment, but they did actually put together a very good team. Saeed Ajmal and Yasir Shah's careers never quite completely overlapped, but both tweakers were at the forefront of this success during the exile. So Pakistan's spin bowling average was only behind India in this period. And while the fast bowlers, struggled a lot, Pakistan's overall test bowling average was still 5th best in the world. And taking 20 wickets in a game was not an issue for them, at least when Ajmal or Yasir were around. There was also this brief chapter where Muhammad Abbas took 59 wickets across 10 games, which was very Fazal Mahmood-like. Test cricket finally returns to Pakistan in December of 2019, and for the next year or so, Pakistan adjusted fine. They defeated Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and South Africa at home, but lost in both England and New Zealand during that period. And their bowling averages weren't flattering. But part of that was because Pakistan came back to Test cricket with pitches from the mid-2000s, flat as a pancake. However, Pakistan was still able to bowl out teams at home without much difficulty, right up until Australia toured in March of 2022. Since then, Pakistan have gone winless in 10 tests at home. They have lost series against all teams except New Zealand. Australia drew the first 2 test matches against them before winning in Lahore, whereas England and Bangladesh swept the hosts. Pakistan had never actually been swept on home soil before that, and it happened twice in a row. In those 10 matches, there were 200 wickets on offer to Pakistan. They took just 128 of them. Only once in 10 attempts were they actually able to take 20 wickets. So that makes it almost impossible without friendly opposition declarations that they were ever going to get close to winning any of those games. Away from home, Pakistan did manage to win games in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Zimbabwe, and the West Indies. But the grand theme of this cycle has to be wickets drying up. Since the start of 2022, for teams which have played a minimum of 5 tests, Pakistan has the worst pace bowling average of 38 and a spin bowling average of nearly 41, better than only Ireland. Overall, Pakistan have the 2nd worst bowling average amongst all teams, 39.46. In an era when batters are not actually making that many runs, this is actually worse than it sounds. And 39.46 never sounds good. And as we said before, it's not like Pakistan didn't have the odd poor bowling eras in the past. But this one does feel unique because they can't buy any wickets at the moment. And of course, this drought is at least partly due to the surfaces that Pakistan have produced since the start of 2022. For a cricket culture in chaos, the wickets at home are really an antidote to that. They could not be any more calm. I mean, honestly, if some of those Pakistani pitches were human, you would be regularly checking the pulse. And as I said before, it's not that Pakistan has ever really been known for sporting surfaces. And the truth is that this is not about flat wickets alone. Because in the last 10 home tests, the local bowlers have averaged 47 runs per wicket, where the opposition bowlers have been striking every 36 runs. How is it possible that the other bowlers are 11 runs per wicket better than Pakistan? Specifically, the opposition seamers have averaged 31 across those 10 games, 16 runs less per dismissal than their Pakistani counterparts. As for the overseas spinners, they're averaging 40, which is 6 runs less than the Pakistani tweakers. Those numbers just don't make any sense. You can't blame home pitchers when other teams can actually take wickets. And this is where it gets crazy, because away numbers since the start of 2022 are better for Pakistan, with their seamers averaging 30.28, which is fine, and their spinners just under 34. Again, that's fine. This amounts to an overall bowling average of 31.72, which is the second best in the world away from home in this period. What are we even talking about here? So this proves that the bane of Pakistan's existence in recent times is that they simply don't know how to take wickets in their own backyard. So it can't be the home wickets because other teams can bowl on them, but it also has to be the home wickets because they are fine when they travel away. That is about the most Pakistani cricket sentence as anything that has ever been said. So historically, has this ever happened before? Australia and the West Indies outbowled Pakistan during the Fazal era. New Zealand were the only team that bowled better than Pakistan in those barren years. Incredible. In the golden era, Pakistan bowlers were supreme at home, bested only by the mighty West Indies, which is fair. Even in the pre-exile 2000s era, South Africa were the only team with a better bowling average in home than Pakistan. No team outbowled Pakistan when their home wasn't even their home and they were in the UAE. So no, this has never happened before. The Pakistan wickets have always been on the flatter side, but Pakistan bowlers are used to this all the way through their cricket. In fact, I would say that one of the reasons Pakistan's bowling has always been at the level it has been those pitches. They needed wristies because their mystery was more important than general finger spin. When they had an offie, he had to discover the doosra. Not to mention reverse swing existed in other places, but the only country that had no other option but to perfect it was Pakistan. So what the hell has happened to their current bowlers? The first name that comes to mind has to be Shaheen Afridi, Pakistan's gun bowler who up until injuring his knee in 2022 seemed to be destined for greatness. Prior to this injury, Shaheen had featured in 25 tests with returns of 99 wickets at less than 25 per victim. A Wasm-esque future for Pakistan's prodigy seemed possible. But, as it happens too often in Pakistan, his career has seen a regression of calamitous proportions since. Since returning to Test cricket in July of 2023, Shaheen has played just 5 tests, and he has averaged nearly 41 in those. That figure is not a typo, and is definitely not good enough for the leader of any attack, or the 5th bowler of most attacks. Most recently against Bangladesh, Shaheen bowled 27.5 overs before taking a wicket, and it took him until the 3rd new ball to cause a breakthrough. Oh my god, imagine going from being one of the best new ball bowlers in the world to having to wait for the 3rd new ball. One could argue that like so many other fast bowlers from Pakistan, Shaheen's rehabilitation was inadequate, and he was probably rushed back too soon for the 2022 World Cup. And remember, that is where he re-injured his knee. Since then, his speeds have been slower, and he's not getting the same kind of lateral movement with the new ball. Fazal Mahmood has said that his wrist is the issue. Some claim it is his front leg, and let's be honest, it could be his toe, because everything wrong with Pakistan cricket at the moment might be toes. And before this, Shaheen had built a reputation of striking up front with the new ball. He used to average under 20 with the new rock in the first 10 overs of an innings before hurting his knee. These days, it's hard to know what he is an actual plus at. He is completely sourceless at the moment. Shaheen is no longer on the road to greatness, largely because it looks like he's only ever bowling on roads now. But he's only played in 4 out of the 10 losses for Pakistan at home, 3 of which were pre-injury. Him not being the same bowler or not being available for long stretches is definitely a pain point, but it's not the root cause of all of Pakistan's bowling woes. Pakistan have played 6 frontline pacers during their winless streaks, not including Shaheen and Nazim. Khurram Shahzad, Muhammad Ali, Mir Hamza, Hassan Ali, Wasim Jr. and Haris Ralph. Unsurprisingly, Nasim Shah has the most wickets, having struck 18 times in 5 test matches at an average of less than 33. Khurram Shahzad has the best bowling average with 24.44, but that's only from 2 tests. The next bet of that lot is Muhammad Ali, who in 4 tests has struck on just 6 occasions, at a colossal average of 67.66. That's a hell of a story. It is also important to note that barring Nasim, none of these seamers have featured in 5 tests, and only Hassan Ali had played test cricket before this run. There is no continuity, there is no experience, and outside of the 13 overs that Haris Ralph bowled, there is no pace. The corpse is slow, there's your autopsy. And what about turn? Since test cricket returned to Pakistan, the local frontline spinner has been Abrar Ahmed. He has taken 29 wickets in 5 tests with a bowling average north of 36. He ran through England in his first couple of matches, and he struggled a lot since then. Neither Yasir Shah, Zahid Mahmood, Sajid Khan, Naman Ali, Abrar Ahmed have averaged under 36 with the ball since Pakistan went back home. It does tell you a little bit about the pitches. But 5 overseas spinners had fared better than Pakistan's tweakers in that period. So again, tells you something about the pitches, but it also tells you a lot about the actual bowlers. But let's do a little bit of reminiscing just to think about some of the bowlers Pakistan have had of recent times. Pakistan had Yasir Shah. He broke the record for the quickest to 200 wickets by 3 matches. Then his body gave way from the incredible workload that he was having, and now you can see him in the Zim Afro T10. Muhammad Abbas took 90 wickets at 23, and then they dropped him. Since then, he has taken 192 wickets at 21.8 in first-class cricket. Pakistan's loss is Hampshire's game. Shadab Khan promised to be a future test all-rounder, and at 25, his groin injuries have limited him so much that he's almost a specialist batter now. Hassan Ali starred at the beginning of his career. His last 7 matches over the last 3 years have 8 wickets. Nazim Shah is still one of the most promising bowlers in the world. In 6 years, he's played 18 tests, getting injured almost at a rate as quick as his deliveries are. And Shaheen Afridi currently looks like a Shaheen Afridi impersonator. That is a lot of very good bowlers who are currently ordinary, injured in county cricket, or having to play in T10 competitions. Once upon a time, Pakistan's bowling lineups were the envy of the world. Now, they would be happy for a couple of 80-mile-an-hour blokes who don't get a hit out of the attack, and a non-mystery spinner who can dry up an end. Forget finding the next Fazal Mahmood. A stock bowler with a decent health record is now as sexy a proposition as Pakistan can have, because they are the team with the disappearing wickets. I have a book out with Abhishek Mukherjee, and it is called Overthrowing Cricket's Empire. And it's about the stories of how each team beat England for the first time. We go all the way back to the demon Fred Spofforth getting annoyed at W.G. Grace for acting a little bit like Alex Carey. And then we come all the way to present times with Rashid Khan's England's redemption. We cover every single team to beat England in a major international, but we also talk about the incredible stories like the barefoot basher from Fiji that almost played for New Zealand. In fact, this book is full of tales like that, like how Pakistan lost a top batter after he was on the run from an angry husband of a movie star he was having an affair with, and also how one future captain of his nation realised he might have to go out and bat at Lords and that he didn't own his own pads. Cricket was used as a tool by the empire, but what happens when those nations grow up and get good at it? Find Overthrowing Cricket's Empire on Amazon today.